My name is Era, and I'm the host of the Tamil Creator Podcast. I chat with creators from all over the world to share their stories and discuss hot topics in a way that I hope inspires, educates, and entertains you. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Tamil Creator. Today, I have Shaminy Waran, and she is an entrepreneur behind a luxury hair collection business with the name of the business including her name. So, Shamini, welcome to the show and thanks for jumping on.
No, thanks for having me. I've been listening to your episodes and they're so fun. So I'm so honored that you've asked me.
And a little backstory here is Shamini actually has younger twin sisters, and for me, I think they were the first set of Tamil twins I've ever met. So it's very fixated, they're the twins, but then now I have my own set of twins in the family of my kids.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
a little less
Yeah, I think
special, but
at that time there weren't many twins around, right? So yeah, they were known as the twins, especially for people who grew up in Melbourne or in that area,
well,
right?
I think because we didn't have social media, I think if maybe there were other Tamil twins, I don't know, but
Yeah.
I remember it would be you would say the twins and everyone would know it'd be them. So just funny.
Damn, yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny, yeah. I think your brother went to school with them, so it's like a small world. We kind of know each other that way too.
Yeah, I used to go to the No Frills. I think
Yeah.
I always got them confused because they're identical, but one or both of them
Yeah.
worked there. And I would
Yeah.
see, with my brother, so I
Yeah.
kind of got to talk to them, but I didn't really know them as well.
Right, right. Yeah,
So
funny.
funny memories, yeah. Yeah, I guess speaking of childhood, you're obviously an entrepreneur now. Was there anything in your childhood or your teenage years that kind of gave a signal or clue that you would be eventually become an entrepreneur or had that inkling?
I always had this fire as this little girl. I think just my position in my family, I'm the middle child of four girls, and I see the twins as equal. They're the youngest kids, and then my older sister. So they got attention differently than I did. Like my older sister was given attention as the older one. It was more of the nurturing one. She had to take care of us, and the younger ones were the babies. So the focus was on them in that way. And I was kind of, I wouldn't say not given attention, but left to kind of, use my own imagination. I would say I was a little bit of a loner. I spent a lot of time, alone in my room, just being creative and doing art. If I saw something, I always wanted to recreate those things. That was who I was. I had the biggest imagination since I was a little kid. Um, in high school, I was that girl. I don't know if you remember ISU projects
Yes.
where you'd have to come in with the project. Everybody knew that I was going to have the most creative project, whether if it was through PowerPoint or displays. I just always wanted to showcase the story through creativity. And so there was always signs that I had an artistic side to me, or I had a creative side to me. I was always somebody that wanted to try different things, whether it was cooking. I was the one who was always cooking and trying things, and people around me would be taste testing, or for sewing. So if I saw someone doing that, I'm I want to try that. And I just always had to prove to myself I could do something. I could do that too. If it was knitting, I remember I'm okay, I'm going to take on knitting. I'm going to try it, and I'll do a project. I'm content, and I'll move on to another project. And then that led to me being the one that was the closest to being good at makeup and hair at that time with all my friends, my family. And so yeah, I think that kind of my creative side kind of paved the way to being an entrepreneur, because when I was on mat leave with my oldest daughter, I think everyone was you should use this time to maybe start a business, right? And I think that's where the whole entrepreneur world for me started, with that, with makeup and hair.
So do you think, because you said when you were younger, you were kind of spend a lot of time alone, were you naturally more introverted, or was that just a result of you being a middle child and kind of, the twins obviously had each other and your older sister, I guess there's an
Mhm.
age gap maybe. Was that the only reason, or were you also naturally introverted as well?
I think as a kid, yeah, I was a very quiet kid. I think I remember in class, I don't know if you remember those book, Little Miss Loud or Mr. Noisy, whatever. And I remember my kindergarten teacher asking everybody, "Oh, who would Miss Quiet be?" And everybody would point to me because I was just a really quiet kid. I had friends, but I wouldn't really speak much or talk what I would be thinking, and so I wouldn't really vocalize it a lot, right? And so I think me being a middle child just naturally just carried that. I was comfortable maybe just being on my own and doing that. And even like now, I wouldn't say I'm an extrovert at all. I think people think that just based on my social media and whatnot. I'm definitely a social introvert, if you know what that means. It's like where I could go out and be in a social setting, and then I need a day or two off just because it was just a bit much for me. Like I did need to go back to my space and I enjoy that quietness as well.
No, I completely understand. I think I'm the same way. I'm
Hmm.
definitely more on the quiet side. I think I like deep conversations versus like having a lot of different conversations.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
I
same.
I think when you're quiet, you're also very good at observing and being a good listener. Like I can, when
Hmm.
I talk to people, I can pick up. I think it makes you more emotionally intelligent, I think, in a way, because like
Yeah,
you're listening a lot more than you talk.
yeah,
I,
yeah.
and like as a business owner, like at least for me in software, there's kind of this image of being extroverted and loud helps in sales because
Right.
when you're like selling software, like as a startup owner, like you're doing it yourself.
Hmm.
But I found that being because I think I ask a lot of good questions and I listen. So I think that's actually made me pretty good at sales in certain
Yeah,
ways.
right.
So yeah, I was just curious. I think,
I actually agree like with that because in at least with my field of work, a lot of my customers are sitting in my chair and they actually open up more. I feel like because I give that space for them to feel safe and comfortable. And I think especially in the in my particular work, it's like I'm working with people who have hair loss or cancer patient. There's a lot of sensitive topics that people get into and my background is mental health in my like I'm in social work and that is my background. So I naturally do gravitate to that kind of work as being the person who listens and saying the right things. And I feel like I am more of an empath in that terms, in that, you know, if you know what I mean. Like I feel like I can connect to people, understand, and it's been more of a good thing with my work in my business as well.
yeah, I would say I'm like the guy you want to go on a road trip with because,
Yeah.
I'll ask a few questions and
Listen.
I'll be quiet pretty much the whole time.
For the whole time, yeah.
I like to listen to
Yeah.
podcasts and just not really talk much,
Oh
but
yeah, same here, same here. I have a list that like I enjoy those rides where it's like I'll even say with my partner, sometimes we don't talk, like we just enjoy the silence and like it's not a bad thing. I feel like, you know, you can talk and you can have those conversations, but there's also a strength in being, you know, comfortable in your silence as well, right? And so yeah, I love podcasts and music.
you talked about kind of how being more of an introvert and kind of good listener, helping with kind of the line of work you do. Like, how did you get into makeup and hair? Was there like a moment or like how did you
Mhm.
transition from this, being something maybe you did more maybe for fun or for friends, but eventually get into doing it at a professional level?
Yeah, good question. So I was on like when I was on maternity leave, my oldest daughter with her. My husband was working out in Alberta and I was in Ontario. So it was me and her a lot alone. And she was a really easy baby. So I had a lot of time, really. Like she was really quiet. I wasn't really like I didn't have such a hard time with her. And so I had all this time to waste. And as most mothers would usually take that time, for me, I was like, oh, I shouldn't be wasting this time. I should be like doing something with it. That's my brain always. Like I'm always wanting to like, you know, use my time in a creative way. And I'm like, and also maternity pay wasn't the best. I don't know if it's the same now, but it was pretty crap back then. So I'm like, you know, it'd be good to have a side hustle. So I knew the one good thing I was good at was makeup and hair. And it wasn't the same as makeup and hair now. Like the level of hair and makeup is definitely improved in quality. Not now, I wouldn't say it was bad then, but I was pretty good for that time. And there was very few makeup artists. So I just started, I think started with a few friends who told a few friends, and it was all word of mouth because social media really wasn't a thing then, nor was I comfortable putting myself out there on social media. Like I think it was Facebook at that time. Um, so it got like it just picked up like that. I think a lot more people started, wanting to get makeup and hair done as guests. It wasn't a thing before. It was only you do brides. But then during that time, more and more people wanted to get their makeup done to go to someone's event. And now it's like grown like tremendously. But I would say it started with that, then it kept going. There was a point where I moved away in 2015 to Alberta for a few years. So I took a break from makeup and hair. But I kept myself relevant. That's when I opened up Instagram. And I'm like, I knew there was a point I might come back to Toronto. And if I did, I didn't want to have to start from the bottom up. So I started doing makeup videos and content creating when it wasn't even a thing at that time. I think few people were doing it. But I was like, oh, maybe I could do some tutorials and whatnot. And so I started growing my Instagram that way. And then when I came back, it was super easy to just get back into that line of work. Yeah.
And so you started with makeup and hair, and then obviously you launched the luxury hair
Mm-hmm.
collection. Do
Mm-hmm.
you still do like makeup and hair, or is it only the hair collection? Because I guess the makeup and hair experience gave you the eye or experience to kind of help with the business, or like do you still do makeup and hair occasionally?
So yeah, I still do it, but you're right. I don't do it as like consistent as I was before. Before I would be booked up every weekend, um, like back to back. Now, like I really have to, like I have an assistant, so I tell her, okay, these are the days in the year that I will be open because I don't want to overwhelm myself with that and then running a business and then I have a full-time job and I'm a mother. So there's a lot of things going on. And so I still do it. The funny thing is, like when people come to me, they don't know me as a makeup artist because they don't know that part of me from my social media. If you go on, it's mainly like a lot to do with my brand and my hair stuff. So they'll be like, oh, they'll see my kit sitting there, and they're like, oh, you do makeup, and I'm like, yeah, that's where I started. This is the whole story, like behind my brand, and so I do have it in the highlights. So some people who catch it will see it, but it still pretty much is word of mouth. People who still come to me or clients or brides who do reach out to me, but I still do it. It's just not as much as before.
And like, how did you get the idea to launch the luxury hair collection? Because like when I first, I don't know how I found it. Like you must have posted or something. And like I
Mhm.
love looking at like different businesses and just kind of, these interesting businesses that nobody would think of. And I was
Yeah.
like, first I was like, oh, like how would this work? Then I kind of read a bit more about like your type of customers and like how you grew the
Mhm.
community. And I was like, oh, that's genius. So like, so how did you get the idea to launch the business, the luxury hair brand?
Okay, so
This episode is sponsored by nobody. That's right, nobody. So if you could be kind enough to hit that subscribe button, that would mean a lot to me.
I've worked with many women of different ages, well, in my like 12 years now of doing hair and makeup, and they range from like being a teenager up until being a grandmother. And a lot of them share their stories about their journey with hair loss. And a lot of them had alopecia. There was like customers that were patients that were cancer patients and were struggling to grow their hair back. Um, and so I had a lot of conversations and I was able to kind of refer them to the right supports at that time. The one thing that they didn't know is like, was there any hair pieces to help them on the interim while they're figuring out, how to grow their hair back or what their condition is and whatnot. And so I remember I had a bride who had severe alopecia. There was no way I could use her hair for the wedding. And so I had to do some research online. And then I remember contacting a couple of suppliers, ordering some pieces, testing them out. I did it on her and it looked beautiful. And I was like, we need to get more of these pieces in the hands of more people because it's life changing for a lot of people. A lot of people don't want to wear full wigs. These aren't really considered full wigs. They're clip-ins that someone can just wear and take off. You wouldn't even know they're wearing it. And so, and the thing with hair toppers, it's not something I created. They've been around for a long time. A lot of celebrities use it. It's really big within Hollywood and movies. A lot of times, a lot of wealthy women have them, right? Because they're very expensive pieces. If they're made in-house here, they can range from 2,000 and plus for one piece. So I find if I was going to launch, I wanted to make sure it was affordable, that they're good quality, that that people have access to this. I don't want people coming and sitting at my chair and then saying I can't afford this and walk away, right? So it did take me about a year and a half for me to like order in a bunch of like toppers from, I would say like I was in contact with over 50 different suppliers, and I did spend quite a bit of money just ordering in and sampling it myself before I narrowed it down to the right supplier that I trusted. Um, because like it's actually funny when I originally started this this idea. I'm like, I want it to be ethically sourced hair. I had all these plans of what I wanted this brand to be. And the more I spoke to suppliers, they're like, there's no way they can guarantee it would be 100% ethically sourced unless it's done in-house, like the donors come and drop it off and I have like a production and they're doing it there, right? Unless I'm there, and they themselves are telling me that, you know, they know for sure that like it's temple hair, that means it's from India, it's donated, and there's auctions, like there's auctions that happen where suppliers will hire somebody to go and auction the hair, and then that's what they bring back. And they do that in other parts of the world as well. So they're saying that's what they're doing, and I just have to take their word for it, right? And that took some time to build trust with the supplier that I was working with, and in terms of quality as well. And so yeah, and then I launched my brand, and when I launched it, I just only launched it with hair toppers because that's really what I wanted to focus on, and it took off. It took off, yeah, and we're doing well.
And what's your business model? Is it like you mentioned, is it you selling it or do people rent it?
So yeah, so we started off with just mainly selling. And the more like, so as customers came, I did see a few people that couldn't afford even the prices that, you know, we were offering. And I didn't want them to leave without a hairpiece because a lot of times they just need it for an event. And they may not use it after. So I did some research, and there are, you know, rental programs for extensions out there. I'm like, I should, you know, try to create a program that works for women here where all my pieces, extensions and toppers, whatever it is, that they can actually rent it for the 48 hours. We wash it and prep it, so we know that it's clean and it's prepped in a way that won't damage our pieces. They come pick it up, they use it, and they don't even have to wash it. They bring it back to us, and it just sounds perfect for a customer. Especially as a makeup artist, I know how important it is when one of my customers come to me and it's prepped properly. Because when you're curling it or when you're doing certain styles with it, if it's not washed properly, then the style's not going to stay. So that's been a beneficial thing on my end, that I have that background knowledge. So my staff are able to prep it in that way for the customers, and the rental program's just like grown bigger than what, like initially I was the one running it, and then I had to hire somebody for it, and it's just taken off and doing really well. So
Yeah,
we offer both.
you mentioned you source, like it took a while to kind of find a vendor, like you had to order so many test products and
Mm-hmm.
all of that. I think it mentioned somewhere on your site 10A grade is like 100%
Yeah.
human hair.
Yeah.
Um, like I guess what level are you aiming for with all your products, and like how are you able to tell the difference in like the different like grades, and like how do they come up with these grades too?
So yeah, that's a good question, because there was a lot of me asking questions about what does this mean? Because they'll tell me, oh, this is 8A. I'm like, what is 8A? What is 10? So they have different grading systems for extensions, and the lower it is, that means you're going to like more synthetic hair. It's less human hair and more synthetic. Sometimes you like, the lower it is, it's hair found at hair salons taking everybody's hair, and they just wash it, and they put it together, and they put silicone oil and they give it to you, and it looks shiny and nice. But when you go to wash it and you curl it, it breaks apart because it's not, the cuticles are not all aligned. So it's going to be more damaged hair that you're getting. And so that, like when people are like, oh, I bought extensions for like $50, I'm like I question like the prices of it as well, because the lower in quality, like the cheaper the extensions are going to be. So I had to make sure that, you know, it had to be 10A and above. Like it does go up, it goes up to 12A and whatnot, but the higher it is, that means it's pure virgin hair. That means it's never being colored, it's never being permed. Like the donor who donated it never colored the hair, or they never permed it. So you're getting the purest form of human hair, and a lot of celebrities can afford the purest form of that. But the higher the grade, I would say 12A, it's like, you know, it's very high. Like it is a lot more expensive. So I try to keep it within the 10A to 12A, because I feel like for people who aren't wearing it on a daily basis, they don't need the best virgin hair. For somebody who installs it in their hair for 6 weeks, they most likely will go for a super high quality hair because they're washing it every day, they're curling it, they're doing more stuff to it. Yes, that's where, like when I'm ordering products, I always try to make sure it's within that grade level.
I imagine if it's like really high quality hair and you
Mhm.
said it's very expensive and people, it wouldn't make sense for somebody to buy it and maybe wear it once or twice.
Right.
I imagine, I guess the rental program has done really well in the sense that for weddings or whatever event, people want to have
Yeah.
really nice like toppers. I guess that's
Right.
becoming more in demand, I assume.
It's definitely becoming more in demand as well. Like it's also a good marketing thing because people will come in to rent and then they end up wanting to purchase it because they liked just how well it sat on them and just like, or if they rent more than once, they realize, you know what, it's better to just purchase it. So it's helped in that sense too. Like I wouldn't say sales have gone down because of rentals as well. They're both, I feel like they both are doing well equally. And yeah, I'm really happy we have both programs going, or sorry, the rental program going. And as well, like a lot of times people will come and they'll try both and they'll end up buying one, or they'll end up buying two, or they'll come and put in a custom order. So we also do custom orders for people who want a specific hair length or hair color or hair texture. So yeah, we have various options for customers coming to us.
Yeah, I never really understood the importance of hair and like the connection to, I guess, confidence. And I
Hmm.
forgot there's a documentary or something I was watching. I think there's a guy that went and gave like haircuts to like the homeless, for example. And like
Hmm.
they talk about hair isn't just hair. It's like when you look a certain way or like you're groomed a certain way, you feel a certain
Right.
way. And
Yeah.
like it gave them confidence to kind of go and get jobs and
Yeah.
change their life essentially with like a haircut, which is pretty crazy when you think about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So I think as you're talking, I can kind of see the similarity with it might sound like, is this something superficial, but actually beyond that, it's, like
Hmm.
you talked about people with like medical conditions or cancer,
Yeah.
etc.
Yeah.
You feel conscious of all these things. So like having something that
Right.
doesn't draw attention to the thing you feel bad
Hmm.
about can really kind of change how you feel and like
Right.
things you end up doing. So yeah.
Yeah. And like going back to like that piece about like there's women who have had really long lost hair and that's their identity, especially with South Asian community. Like we really value our hair, right? Our mothers, our grandmothers, our ancestors, that's they've oiled their hair to keep it less strong and thick because that's such a part of our identity. And especially like our parents' generation, I see more like they struggle with it during menopause. It's such a common thing for women to lose their hair, more than half their hair. And I see like when they come to me, they're in tears of like, they want something to like go back, or they'll put on a piece and they're like, oh, my hair used to look like this. Like just the connection they had to like who they were is so huge. So there's such a yeah. When those are the moments that kind of drive me to keep wanting to create more and more pieces for women. I also get the question, do I have hair pieces for men? It's such a huge thing that if I do it, I want to make sure I have like a proper program set up for that. Um, and like if going back to hair tales, we had a conversation with a group of men. I don't know if you got a chance to check that out, and it was one of my most interesting conversations because they were like talking about how like within men like they kind of laugh about it when like a man starts losing hair. And it's like it's a funny thing, but it's such a shocking thing for someone when they're losing their hair, right? And there's also like negative connotations like with the Tamil community, like the older generation when they look at a bald guy, they think, oh, he's like a rowdy, or like there's some stereotypes with that too. And so like I didn't realize how much men were affected by hair loss, as much as women get affected, but it's definitely like so important for us to understand that hair is so deep rooted in many ways, and it's not just like for superficial reasons.
Well, it's also like dating in a sense too. Like if you're a man and especially
Hmm.
in the South Asian community and you are losing your hair, you don't have like I think
Yeah.
it's because it's crazy because I hear like what female friends of mine when like they're discussing guys, like the
Right.
comments. It's I don't think they mean it in a bad way, but it's like
Yeah.
you notice good hair right away. It's kind of a thing that
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
programmed to kind of appreciate or like look at
Yeah.
positively. Even my wife will say like, "Oh, I'm glad you have lots of hair." I don't think she means it in a bad way. It's just
Yeah,
she
no, it's like
appreciates it as
human
a
nature. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I
So
agree.
it was so funny that you were saying because I was like, oh, I feel like hair toppers for men would be I guess it's like a
Would be.
toupee or I don't
Yeah,
know if it's like a
theirs would be a toupee, yeah. Because
yeah.
if like for women, like even with hair loss, we still have hair to clip into. With men, like if they're having like full like hair loss, like then you move into like a toupee system and stuff. So yeah,
And
hopefully we'll get there.
with your business, obviously with all that you have on your plate, so like you said, you're like a mom, like you work full time, and you obviously run this business. Do you have any business partners, or is this something that you run, like maybe not run on your own, but is this something that you essentially created on your own, and then maybe you added a team after?
So before I started the business, like I was so fearful of doing this on my own, and I was like, I should go into this with someone. Like that was my thought process the whole time. But if I ever went into it with someone, I knew it would have to be someone I trusted, so it would have to be a friend or a family. But I really thought really deeply into it, and I was just fearful of like ruining relationships. That you hear that happen so often, especially like when you're starting a business. It has to do with money and ideas, and and I'm somebody who has like ideas, and I want like to put my ideas out there, and I don't want it to be shut down and then that be like an issue for the both of us. So yeah, right now it's just me. All me really coming, like I have staff that I've hired, but like I'm the main person behind the business right now.
No, 100%. Having, I think any kind of relationship, whether it's business, relation, like romantic or
Mhm.
even friendship, like it's really hard to maintain. Because with business partners, like you're pretty much like I mean, it depends if you especially put money in, time in, like you're locked into that
Yeah,
relationship until
yeah.
you figure out a way out.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. There,
yeah.
there's no way, like I told my husband, I'm like, there's no way I would go into business with him because we have two different ways of thinking. Um, so like I knew that, it had to be just me, at least for now, until like, it grows. And maybe if I do venture into that later, then, I'll be more comfortable to bring the right person in.
I've talked to other women that are entrepreneurs and like, especially if they're moms, and I think you talked about this as well, that you have the amma or like mom guilt sometimes, or you
Yeah,
did. Is
yeah.
this something that you still have? And if not, or like, have you been able to overcome or mitigate it somehow? Did you know that every time you left a 5 out of 5 review for this podcast, a Tamil parent lets their child pursue a career in the creative arts? Okay, that's probably not true, but if there's a chance that it is, do you really want to jinx it? Leave a review. Do it for the young creative in you.
It definitely comes and goes, that I'm not guilt. It's gotten better because I've had to work on my thought process. But yeah, that guilt was like real for the longest time. It held me back from even pursuing like like my business for a while because I just wanted to make sure I was there for them. And I wasn't neglecting them in any way. And then once I started it, it was crazy. I started it in 2020, um, January, just as the pandemic started. So it was like the worst time to launch a business. And they were at home, like they were doing homeschooling. I was working full time at home, and then I was after hours had to like be the person in contact with the supplier, doing the customer support, creating content at nights. And like, during the day, like I was working trying to, and it was like, for a lack of a better word, it was like a shit show. And I felt like I wasn't the best mother that I could be for them. And that guilt was so huge during that time. I was just like, what am I doing? Like, is my dream this so important that I can't even like, talk to them without snapping or without being there and listening to them? Because it was a lot of like, very like the conversations were very much like, okay, I don't have time for this. Let's get this done. Right. And so I think it hit me like there was a point last year, early last year, all that stress, all that stuff that I had on my plate, it really got caught up with me with my health. I had to take off work for 2 months. And I think I had to really make that decision to slow things down. And I think that's when I decided, okay, I need to hire somebody. I need to hire some staff that's going to help me. I need to cut back on the amount of like makeup I'm doing. I need to cut back. Like I had to make some real changes for myself first because I needed to be a healthier, happier version of myself so I could be a better mother for them. And I saw a huge difference in just how much happier they were around me compared to like that year. So now that I'm learning those skills, now that like after like 5 p.m., I don't like I it's like I'm all theirs, and then on the weekends especially, I don't book any consults. And we have family time together. So learning that balance has been important where I can still have my business, I could still work and still be a great mother to them. And it's important for me to do that and show them that I'm able to do this because they're my girls and they're looking up to me, and this is how they're gonna thrive to do more with their life by just watching me. And it's cute because they'll say to me, "Oh, Mommy, we're so proud of you." Like when they see, like, even if I'm doing a podcast, like, "Oh, I'm so proud of you." Like then when they see these things come out, so it just pushes me to want to, not give up in doing these things, even though in the moment it might seem like too much. But yeah, the guilt it's real. I hear this from a lot of mothers, and it definitely holds them back from pursuing what they want to do. I think it's also this pressure that it's expected that mothers are the ones who have to sacrifice and give up whatever they're doing to be there. And we see a lot, unfortunately, we see, the opposite, that pressure is not put on the fathers as much as mothers. And you could see like men can easily move up the ladder in their career compared to women. There's fear of when women go on mat leave that they're going to lose their job when they go back, right? And so these conversations are real, and we need to have more conversations about this to say that it's okay. Like, you're going to be okay. You shouldn't hold back. And we're in a different world today where I feel like we have better support systems than we did before.
How's your relationship with your friends? Like, do your friends understand the fact that you have a lot on your plate and like this, you're already a mom, you work full time. That might seem like a lot to people, but you, on top of that,
Mm,
launched a business. Do your
yeah.
friends understand that? Or like, is this something that some people didn't get? And
My friends are amazing. They're super supportive. In the beginning, like what I would hear from them is like, "Oh my God, you're such a super mom." That is what I was hearing from a lot of people. It was to a point where I would think that was a compliment. I'm like, "Oh, I'm such a super mom," and so I'd keep like doing all of that until I really crashed and burned. And I'm like, but they also may have meant it of like, you have a lot on your plate too, right? And maybe indirectly trying to check in with me too. And they did. In between, they'd be like, "How do you do it all? How are you doing this?" Because they, like a lot of people struggle just the day to day, and I get that, right? And I think this is that little girl in me that had that fire to be like, I could do it all. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna prove that I can do this. And it was like, I don't know who I was trying to prove it to, but I was trying to do it all. But I'm very open to my friends. We have these conversations. Um, and they've been one of my biggest supports. So yeah, I've always prioritized making time for them, and even more now than before. During that time, it was COVID, so I didn't get to really get out and talk to a lot of them. So now we definitely make sure that we check in. We have these conversations that are really real. A lot of them are having like their kids that are, going into like grade school, and like so they're feeling that guilt. So it's been helpful for me to have felt it and experienced it and talk to them about it.
you said you launched your business during the height or just the beginning of COVID,
Yeah.
which obviously it sucks, but I think the unrealized or like the benefit you would probably didn't realize is if you can create a business during businesses that were created during the Great Depression,
Yeah.
they're built for withstanding really poor economic conditions or like things like that.
Right.
So one of the things you did was you opened a physical studio. I would have thought you would have stuck completely to online because, online, especially during COVID, became super
Hmm.
popular, super busy.
Yeah.
And most people who previously maybe would have not bought online started buying online. So that
Hmm.
behavior changed as well. So why
Right.
did you decide to have a physical studio as well?
So my product was really unique. It hadn't been something that people knew about within, especially the South Asian community. People were like, "What is a hair topper?" Like they didn't know what that was. So it would have been hard for them to jump and just make that blind purchase without them coming and trying it on and seeing the magic of the piece. Like I knew if I can get somebody in my chair, I knew that to this day. I know if I can get somebody in my chair, I can make a sale. I could show them how amazing this product is. But if somebody bought it online and I mailed it out to them, they always almost contact me because they have 100 questions because it's such a unique piece. You need to know how to put it on. You need to know how to prep. And we do have like hair care like instructions, but having that face-to-face conversation. So we do virtual as well. Like I have international customers. I always recommend if you're going to purchase a topper, at least do a virtual with me. So I could see your hair. I could see if this texture really going to, like fit your texture. And we don't do returns, unfortunately, because it's for hygiene purposes. We say, like once you purchase it, unfortunately, there's no return. So Consults, I always carve out time for that. They're free, but I always make sure that I put that time because that is where most people's questions will get answered. With that, you always make a sale because people feel like they've been heard or they can get all their questions out right there and then. Like that being said, I don't know as we grow and grow, I'm going to be able to have the time that I have had all this time available to offer. But as long as I do, I'll definitely keep offering in-person and virtual consults.
Your business, I think, sounds like it's growing. You've been doing obviously something well to make it grow. So as you grow, you obviously have to hire people and hire people in the right places. So number one, I think most people's natural inclination is try to do everything themselves because
Right.
it's really hard to trust people with something you
Mhm.
built on your own. So how did you go about building your team and finding the people for those things that you needed help with?
Like when I first launched, like I would say 6 months after I launched, I was doing everything to like at that point. I was the marketing person, the content creator, the person in contact with the supplier, the customer support. I was everything. When responding to emails. And then a marketing company actually first reached out to me. And like I knew them personally as well. So it all comes down to trust. Like I don't know if I would have just jumped to anybody and say, okay, like I wouldn't have said okay, but they pitched a plan for me and talked to me about what they could help me with social media. So I was said, okay, let's try it, let's do it. And they took on helping me with my social media for about a year and a half, a little almost 2 years. And they were super helpful. They were able to see beyond what what me as a business owner can see, like, in terms of what's trending outside of like stuff that I don't know. They were able to bring that insight for me and eventually like I outgrew their services, so like I'm now back to doing my own stuff. But in that process I was able to work with a girl that I built a lot of trust with, and I asked her if she would come and be my assistant. And yeah, she joined and she still is like my assistant. I love her. The reason I took her on is as my first official staff. I had I had a like a part-time staff previous to her, but she was like my first official one that I hired. And the reason I did is because she took on the brand like it was her brand. Like she would talk about it like it was like, whatever we did, it was going to be for the betterment of like this brand. Like, and I needed that. I need someone to love it the same way I loved it because it was my baby. Like the amount of love that I would put into, I needed someone to know that they would, do the same. And so yeah, that's Christina. Everybody who contacts us, she's the first point of contact. And then shortly after, like when the rental program I was running for 6 months, it became a monstrous program. It was too much for me to handle. And then I asked my sister, my older sister, she's the coordinator for that program, and she's like so diligent. Like she's one of the best workers you could hire. So and like I would love to just give, like if I'm going to pay somebody, it's people that I could like bring in and trust and love. And so these two women have been like such a huge support to me, and I'm able to like not touch my business during the day while I'm working and come after hours and know that things have been answered and things have been prepped and ready. And it's been such a like a peace of mind for me to have them on the team.
What does success look like for you 3 years out for your business?
So all this, like I would say I'm not such a huge risk taker. So like the past few years, I've really focused on like perfecting the South Asian community clientele. But when we do our campaigns and stuff, it's very focused on the mainstream. It's not just because we want to let people know we still offer pieces for mainstream clients as well. And I still do. I do like one-on-one consults with them and I order pieces for them. But financially, to be able to have pieces available for everyone is just outside of like my budget. So that's like a goal, is like in the next like 3 to 5 years, be able to like grow my business to that scale where I can offer it to everybody around the world. And like I said, it's very pricey to break it down.
You offer the rental program to international customers too?
No, no, not the, I meant like for purchase.
Oh,
The
purchase. Okay.
rental, yeah, but like same with the rental program, we want to be able to expand that to like the mainstream, like everybody, like all ethnicities and all like hair textures. But I mean like for sales, like right now, my if you go to my website, a lot of the sales that people can purchase is like natural black hair because that is what we have in stock. It's broken down into like hair length and hair texture and hair volume. So you need to have all of that available in our studio for when people order, and so that we can mail it out, right? And this costs like each piece costs a lot of money to me. So if I'm gonna buy it, I need to know that I'm gonna be able to sell those. So the next little while is going to be like doing a little market research and see like, what's the most popular ones for me to now keep adding to our line. So that's definitely my next goal for the next few years.
Have you ever thought of doing pre-orders? Like if
So we
somebody wants to buy
do.
something, get a deposit and
We do that, like, so that's what, like, when people come, like we do custom orders. So when someone comes and they say, okay, I want this done, we'll get it done. We take the full payment.
hmm.
We don't even take like deposit, just because they're such expensive pieces. If someone's ordering a custom piece, then we can't sell it to someone else if they don't come and purchase it. So that we still do that. It's just now, like, to make sure the sales are more frequent, it's nicer to have it available in stock, so that people, like someone in LA or someone in like New York wants to purchase it, they can just go and purchase an 18-inch blonde, blah, 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 like, and we can just mail it out, right? And there are other companies around the world that offer that service. I'm just not, I wouldn't say I am knowledgeable yet, or I have the expertise yet with women with colored hair. Like, I have more knowledge about South Asian hair and textures. So I have to build that knowledge base before I'm able to offer that to everybody.
Sorry, what I meant with the pre-order was I'm just brainstorming with you.
Yeah.
No, with like the non, I guess, black hair like
Hmm.
customers,
Right.
like say you get like 20 people that are like, hey, I'd love to get
Right.
this texture. I'll put
Yeah.
down 10% or 15%. I
Right.
would just be curious if like people would even go for that. I don't know. It's like
Yeah.
we do a lot of that in like software. So like for me, I was like,
Right.
oh, I
I
wonder if
should
that.
talk to you about this after.
No, I was
Well,
just
like,
curious. Yeah.
yeah, like, I think, like, I haven't tried that. It also is like, a lot of my following right now is South Asian. I do have like like, South Asians that follow me as well, and they contact me separately. So it's more of me learning, how do I get access to them to have this conversation, or, like, to find out this interest. So it is a lot of me learning that too. Like, how do I get access to this? Like, I was mentioned on City Line through Shobana. At one point, I remember that, like, there's a lot of like women from other ethnicities that had contacted me that same week. They're like, oh, I've heard about you, blah, blah, blah. And so, like, I remember there was a bunch of sales. And so I know there's a need for it, but then how do I continue to, like, build that? So I think I need more like expertise, or advice from people in that field to kind of help me with that. That's definitely going to be a huge part of my next 5 years.
We talked a lot about your successes, but
Mhm.
I guess where you get a lot of your learnings from is, I guess you can call it failure, or like a learning lesson, but like
Yeah.
what has been something that you've experienced like that in say the last 5 years or 3 years, whatever you can
Mhm.
remember, and like what was the learning you got from that experience?
Well, it definitely was, like, initially when I launched, I'm like, I'm gonna launch offering this to everybody and anybody. If they want a specific length, a color or texture, we're gonna be able to offer it. And this is COVID at this time, because my supplier told me that they should be able to do it. So I remember I got in a whole bunch of orders, and then there was a delay.
Money can be hard to come by, but here's $100 opportunity for you. Join my free newsletter for free exclusive content and a free chance to win $100 when I hold special draws. Did I mention that it's free?
The shipment wouldn't come to us. Like, it had passed 6 months at this point, and I was like in tears with my supplier, and she was like, it's stuck, and they closed the borders to this country, and it was just stuck. It couldn't even come. There's nothing I could tell to my customers. And, like, I remember, like, some of them were like, okay, well, it's been too long, so I offered the refunds back. I remember it was such a horrible experience. And then I just knew I needed to, like, I needed to have pieces in stock. Like, I couldn't just do this, come and tell me what you want. And because it's not like the facility was here, it was abroad. So that was a learning lesson for me, definitely. It's important to, and my fear was investing a lot of money early on. I was like, oh my God, am I gonna, like, I remember at that time, it was like $30,000 I had to invest into purchasing these pieces, and knowing that, okay, are these pieces going to actually sell? Right. And I had to take that risk. I remember, like, I had that gut feeling. I'm like, this is the only way this business will be successful, is if I did this. And I did it, and we sold out within months because we had it in stock. People were able to come, try it on, and they grabbed a piece and they left. And I was just like, I should have done this a long time ago. And so now I've learned that lesson, in terms of making sure that, like, having pieces available for people and letting people know when they do order a custom piece, this is the worst case scenarios that can happen, right? So that's definitely a learning lesson from my past few years.
If you had a chance to go back in a time machine and visit your 16-year-old self, what would you tell her?
I would tell her, don't listen to Mr. Destiny. That was my guidance counselor. I remember I was 16, it was grade 10. He called me down because I chose my courses for next year. Like he knew, like he looked at my marks. I was doing really well in my sciences, my maths and everything. And he was like, okay, you're going places. But he's like, but why did you choose art? Because I loved art. Like it was like my one course I can go to and just let free. And he's like, you should take French. And I was like, but I like art. And he's like, well, you're not going to go anywhere with art. You do French. You can probably, go into careers with French and whatnot. And that 16-year-old girl was like a people pleaser, never stood up for herself. And I was just like, okay. And I just did that. And that held me back with a lot in terms of my career because I just knew, okay, people were like, you're good in sciences, go down the medical field, go down this field. And I just let others guide me, even though in my head, I'm like, I'm good at it, but I love art, and that was, and it was a time where art wasn't really, you couldn't really make a career out of it, unfortunately. So it wasn't like rocket science for me to make that decision not to go down that road. But yeah, I would definitely tell that girl to like, stick to her gut and like should have pursued art a lot more and stop pleasing people.
I'm not a big fan of the school system, but I mean, there's definitely some benefits to it, or like
Yeah.
there's some value to it, but I think there's a lot of conform, like pushing kids to conform,
Right.
especially back in the day. I think they've kind of changed a little bit now,
Yeah, yeah.
but it's a good thing, I guess, you didn't
Yeah.
completely listen to your guidance counselor.
Yeah, luckily it worked out in my favor. But yeah, that happened to a lot of people. Like you tell them what you want to do, and they're like, "No, this is what based on your marks, this is what you're going to be doing with your life." And so
Looking forward, like in terms of your personal legacy, in a few sentences, how would you want to be remembered by your friends and family?
I want them to remember me as a woman that really pushed barriers for her time. Like when I was, in my 20s and early 30s, like it wasn't common for women to have their own business. It wasn't common for women to be in a position of leadership. That was another fear of why I held back in many ways. And so, but I pushed and I'm in a position where I can say I've done it. And I want other women who are fearful of that to see that it's doable. You could be a mother, you're not selfish in doing that. And you being a happier person makes everybody happy as well. And so I want people to remember me as someone who fought to fuel her fire all the time and didn't give up on that little dream that she had.
That's a good way to segue into the last segment of the podcast. It's a game I like to call Creator Confessions. It's a speed round. I'll say a bunch of
Okay.
statements, and then you tell me the first thing that pops to mind. Ready?
Okay. Not good at this, but I'll try.
Favorite Tamil food?
Mutton rolls. The one from Gaza only.
Only from Gaza. Okay. Uh,
Yeah, I feel like they don't have like theirs is not as thick and filled with potatoes, so I like theirs.
something that scares you?
Butterflies.
Butterflies. Wow. Okay.
Butterflies are anything with wings. I just don't have control of them because they just, flutter everywhere. Yeah.
Insecurity that you have.
Self-doubt.
Favorite TV show you're watching?
Watching New Amsterdam, but I just started Down to Earth but with Zac Efron. Really, I'm enjoying that.
A place you're itching to travel to?
South Africa.
Fellow Tamil creator you want to give a shout out to?
All the Tamil creators. There's no one particular, to be honest. Like everyone's like grinding and doing their thing, and I'm so proud of them.
Favorite childhood memory?
My sister and we used to have our own, like we used to host our own radio show and record it on a tape recorder, and I'd be like the DJ, and she'd be like playing the game show. So I remember that as like my favorite childhood. And we used to also play like we would have our own apartments like on our bunk bed. Like the top was hers and mine was the bottom, and we'd use the ladder for the elevator. So those memories of like creative play that we don't have nowadays with kids, like it was so much fun.
Something you like to do for fun outside of work?
Um, Now is mainly crawling into bed and watching a movie. Yeah.
Favorite movie of all time?
English or Tamil?
Either or.
Okay, Tamil, I like Jalindra Odukada, the one with Surya and Jyotika, and English, I would say Titanic was my most favorite movie.
Wow, okay. I haven't heard a lot of Titanic.
Yeah, Titanic. Like, I don't know, it just gave me the feels. I think I was like such I was in grade 10 or 11 at that time, and I remember watching that movie and I was in just like awe. Like, yeah, I loved it.
Something that you could benefit from caring less about.
People's people's thoughts of me
What's a decision you've been putting off for a while?
quitting my full-time job.
A purchase you've made that you've splurged on recently in the last few years that you have no regret about.
Our Southeast Asia trip this summer.
Pet peeve?
Oh, when people like my partner leave like the drawers and cupboards all open and they just forget to close it or they don't turn the lights off when they leave a room, it really irks me.
If you knew that you were going to die tomorrow, a regret that you would
Mhm.
have.
That my overthinking stopped me from living my best life.
A person or celebrity you look up to.
A person or celebrity, no, I don't really have a celebrity I look up to, but I think my mother has always been someone that's been like my rock, and she's raised the four of us and our grandkids. We all look up to her. She's definitely been my rock.
What's a book you've read or a podcast you've listened to that's had an impact on you?
Um, I love podcasts. I listened to How I Built This by Guy
Oh
Raz,
yeah, I
who
love it too.
I love that guy. And I feel like your podcast, I was going to say yours too. Like I feel like I love yours because it's very similar and it really like highlights like our, successes, but also our failures. Like people need to hear that. So yeah, I love both of your podcasts.
I didn't realize it, but like, yeah, his interviewing style definitely had an impact on kind
Yeah.
of how I interview. He's a really good interviewer.
Like it's like you're watching a show. Like I
Yeah.
love how he just, gets right to the question and yeah, love it.
A belief, behavior, or habit that's improved your life.
Having routine every
And
day.
and finally, a piece of advice that you'd give to your fellow aspiring Tamil creators out there.
I would tell them to like tell people about your dreams. Like don't just dream it. Like talk to people about your dreams because there's people there that's willing to support you on it, give you ideas, and don't be afraid because the worst that can happen is that it doesn't happen, right? I mean, you wouldn't know unless you try it. So definitely tell people what fuels your inner fire and only if you're happy can you be happy. Like you could be a happy partner, happy mother, happy father, happy like whoever. Only if you actually live your best life can you be better for everyone else around you. So
Well, that's a good way to kind of end off the podcast. For somebody listening, they've been inspired or they want to just reach out to you, to learn more about your business. Like, what's the best way for someone to connect with you?
So you can email us at hello@shamwaran.com and we respond within 24, 48 hours and definitely you can get in touch with me through there.
Well, Christina will then connect
She will.
them with
I
you.
was going to say, Christina will connect you to me. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for jumping on and sharing your wise words. I'm sure a lot of people listening will kind of really appreciate your story. So look forward to people hearing it. And
It's been
for
my honor. Thank you for having me. Like I said, you're doing an amazing job. I really can't wait to hear more episodes in the future. I've just been like back to backs like this since the summer. I've been on trips and I've listened to podcasts. You've been on my list as well. And like a lot of my own friends on there, like it's so amazing to hear their stories too. So
I'll take it.
yeah.
Thank you so much. And
Yeah.
for everyone listening, thank you guys as always, and look forward to the next episode.